Ciao, everyone, and welcome back to Experience Italy with Friends. This week's episode is dedicated to answering the most frequently asked questions I receive from my clients as their travel advisor. We'll discuss the key topics and tips needed to help prepare you for your trip, as well as keep you comfortable during your travels. This includes everything from booking flights, passports and visa information, travel insurance and cell phone readiness, cash and credit card advice, packing tips, as well as staying safe and healthy while in Italy. Our goal is to make sure you're ready to have the best travel experience in Italy as possible. Let's get started. Andiamo! Experience Italy with Friends is a travel and lifestyle podcast where we will explore our favorite destinations and hidden gems, share key travel tips and cultural insights, and provide real-time updates about our move to this remarkable country. Join me, Tanya Razzo, an Italian travel expert and founder of Amici Vacations, and my Italian husband and producer, Davide Razzo, on a journey that is sure to inspire you and prepare you to create immersive and authentic experiences of your own in the beautiful country of Italy. Hello again, everyone, and welcome to our 6th episode. I'm your host, Tanya, and I'm here with my co-host, producer, and husband, Davide.
Ciao, ciao.
We first want to start off with a thank you for listening. There have been downloads from all over the world, the US, of course, Australia, Europe, and even Africa. Very exciting.
Wow, that really keeps us motivated, and I want to give a big welcome to our new listeners. And also, I want to remind you to join our Experience Italy with Friends Facebook group so you can ask questions and interact with each other.
That's awesome. This week's episode was inspired by my clients and the questions they ask me as their travel advisor. All are related to preparing you for your trip and ensuring a stress-free experience. I have developed many written guidance documents, but I'm learning that many prefer to hear it live. So I thought this would be a good episode to record.
Yeah, that's great because now they can listen to this episode instead of getting the short version when you talk to them face to face.
Exactly. And I'm going to admit, this is not necessarily the most entertaining of topics, giving you that forewarning, but hopefully it will adequately prepare you to have a safe and wonderful experience in Italy, and that is critical.
But before we dive into today's discussion, as usual, let's give them an update on our lives in Italy.
Well, we've been in Pistoia now for almost 3 weeks, have been settling in and getting to know the city. We just met with a small group of expats, and that was super fun.
Mm-hmm.
And we also fit in a short trip to visit some friends in Germany and Slovenia, and also hopped over into the region of Veneto for a bit. And that's a great part of the experience of living here, too, being able to travel to other countries and regions more easily. And that's a ton of fun.
Yeah, that was awesome to meet up again with friends from back home. It was a little bit of a roller coaster, though, because we took a train from here, Pistoia, to Venice, right? Then hopped on to the airport. We flew to Munich, got into the Oktoberfest. Then, after that, we went back to Venice, rented a car, and drove to Trieste, and eventually to Slovenia. There in Slovenia, we spent a couple of days touring wineries, right? And after that, we said goodbye to our friends. Special shout out.
Yes, to the Bergs and Palmers.
Yeah.
We love you.
And then from there on, we drove to Veneto, and we went to a Prosecco winery in Valdobbiadene.
Good job saying that.
Thank you. I had a hard time to say that, but psht.
Okay.
Anyway, we wanted to go to Cortina d'Ampezzo, but the weather was really bad, so we opted for Treviso instead. And
yes, it was a lovely city.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to cover the Prosecco region and Treviso in the Veneto region in a future episode.
Okay.
But I have to say that while it was a busy week and we covered a lot of ground, first Oktoberfest was an experience. I mean, I didn't know what to expect.
It was a hoot.
Lots and lots of people. It happened to be the Italian weekend.
Yes.
And we did not know that in advance, but there were Italians everywhere, which was quite fitting.
Yeah.
And a lot of people singing the Italian theme songs
and
such in the bar. So that was fun. And it was our first time in Trieste. And this is on the eastern border of Italy, right next to Slovenia. And I found it to be very similar to Italy in many ways, but also had some, notable cultural differences. So
A little bit.
it was fun.
Yeah.
So overall, we had a great time. We'll talk more about that in future episodes. Okay, well, that was a quick update on our lives here in Italy, but let's shift gears and dive into this week's topic. We will begin with a few questions about things to do to prepare before you leave home, and then move to some questions related to traveling in Italy.
Okay. Well, Tanya, let's start with booking flights. What advice do you have about flying to and from Italy?
Well, while I don't book flights for clients, I do have some general advice to give about doing so.
Okay.
And I have to say my experience has mostly been from the US, but I think, much of this advice would apply to other countries as well.
Sure.
So first, flying to Italy. As with all flying, direct flights are naturally the best to minimize connecting issues. But when flying from the US, these are typically only available from the East Coast. It is good to note that more cities are starting to offer direct flights to Rome next year because of the Jubilee.
Yep.
So that will be helpful. But if you can't get a direct flight, my next best advice then is to recommend looking for a connecting flight in the US versus in Europe when possible.
Why is that?
One, it requires less time to change planes because you don't have to go through pass control or any type of new security.
Okay.
And secondly, you'll likely arrive in Italy earlier in the day and have more time to do things that first day.
Who doesn't want that?
Exactly. So now we haven't always had a ton of options from Minnesota. So we often have to connect in Europe and have had tons of flights going through Amsterdam and Charles de Gaulle and Paris. And just want to say, for those fellow Minnesotans or Midwesterners who are in this situation, pick Amsterdam over Paris if you can.
Yes.
And it's just a smoother airport to get through, less cumbersome, less distance all around. And for all connections, really, whether in the US or in Europe, really recommend that you need 2 hours of connection time at a minimum. And I have to say, I've seen a ton of airlines say as little as 55 minutes is a legal connection. But I've heard of so many issues. And in just today's age where there's just constant delays, I think it's better to have some more buffer. So I say aim for 2 hours.
Just think of it's a big airport. By the time your luggage is being unloaded and loaded in onto your connection, it needs at least 45 to 55 minutes. So anyway.
Yes. And even if you make your connection, your bags might not. And
Exactly.
That's just as much of a hassle, if not more.
Okay. Now, Tanya, how about when you fly back home?
Again, the quickest advice is direct flights are best. But if you need to connect, I'm actually going to recommend doing the opposite of what we said above, and you should connect in Europe. This allows you to check your bag to your final destination. Otherwise, in the US, you need to go through customs in your first destination of arrival. You need to claim your bag. Then you need to go through customs, recheck your bag to the final destination, and it takes quite a bit of time. We've had to do this in New York or Atlanta before, and
I hated
there
that.
are often just huge lines. And it's just a pain to have to do customs first and then get on a plane again. So try to do it in Europe, and then you're on a flight home and you're good.
So give me, do you have any advice to which airports to fly into when you go to Italy?
Yes.
Do you have a preference?
I do. And I actually prefer the smaller airports.
Mm-hmm.
And those are Venice, Florence, Naples. And the main reason is they're just easier to get in and out of quickly. They only have 5 to 7 luggage carousels to help you visualize. And you can land in Florence, get your bag, go through customs, and be in a taxi within 30 minutes.
Yes.
And that is huge. Whereas in Milan and Rome, they're larger airports. It's going to take almost twice as much time just to get out the door and maybe into that taxi or car service or rental car. And they're further outside of the city.
Right.
So it takes you longer to get to your hotel overall. So,
Yeah, Florence, it took us, 15 minutes to get to downtown. And in Rome, it takes another 40 minutes.
Right.
So,
and I also want to just add, as I mentioned in episode 2, I recommend multi-city flights if possible. So maybe fly into Milan and out of Naples, or into Venice and out of Rome. And we're not used to doing that in the US or in most other travels. It's a round trip to and from the same place, but it does add a lot of logistical efficiency if you can.
But isn't it going to be a little bit more expensive like that?
Potentially. And I just have to say, like, the upside of flying into a Milan or Rome, the bigger, more complicated airports, is that flights are often cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
But then you need to also consider the cost of a train or a car service or moving, hotels to be closer to the airport the night before, and all the extra travel time that's required to maybe go from one end of the country to another. And so let me just give you an example. I have often, clients flying into Rome.
Mm-hmm.
They are then headed to the Amalfi Coast and, potentially Sorrento. If they're flying in to Rome, and I recommend a car service because you're exhausted and just need to relax, it's going to cost 600 to 700 euros for that car service and at least 3 hours.
Wow.
Now, you can take the train, but it adds complexity. It's still going to be a couple $100, and you need a car service from Naples. And, overall, it just may be cheaper to fly into Naples and pay a couple extra $100 to achieve that than add in all of this additional complexity. So
Right.
For me, time and less stress is often more valuable than dollars. So just evaluate the complete picture of transportation getting to and from that airport.
Cool.
So, Davide, let me ask the next question. What advice do you have about passports?
Well, okay. So everyone needs a passport to go out of the country, right? So if you go to Italy, you need a passport. So make sure that its expiration date is at least 6 months after your expected return date to the US.
Yes, that's critical. I want to stress that because I've had no less than 3 clients over the last 2 years discover an expiration issue like within 6 weeks of departing.
Yeah.
And it created a lot of added stress and fees, and even one had to fly to a different city to get an appointment and get it done in time. So not only does it have to be valid on the day of travel, 6 months later.
Okay. Well, if you do have to renew it, just make sure allow 7 to 10 weeks and get it done sooner than later. Okay. Anyway, so something new now to know that starting from next year in 2025, U.S. passport holders that are traveling to Europe, they will need to apply for a visa, or it's an authorization through the European Travel Information and Authorization System. Acronym is ETIAS. So before you go, get that authorized on their website. This new rule was set actually to go into effect this year, but the rollout was delayed. So from next year on, you need that. It's actually not really a visa, but because you can't get denied, but it's for them to monitor people that are coming into Europe, into the Schengen territories. So they'll monitor, they have a better understanding who is longer than 90 days there. So because you can only be there for 90 days.
Yep. So it's more of a tracking thing, a registration that they know which countries you are going to in total and how many days you'll be in Europe.
You have to understand that Europe, they don't have borders anymore, like when we go to Canada or to Mexico, right? So this way, it's a better way for them to monitor that. Anyway.
Okay. I'm also often asked if you should carry your passport or leave it in the hotel. What do you advise?
Well, technically, you do need identification documents on you when you're on the street. But I think it's, in my opinion, it's better to leave your passport at the hotel in a safe and take a picture of your passport and have it on you on the phone. So we actually got stopped the other week or a couple of weeks ago in Italy. And so you showed them your picture and that was just fine.
Yeah, worked out great. And is it normal for hotels to ask for a copy of your passport? You know, we're quite sensitive to sharing information in the U.S.
Yes, it is actually. It's required for them to do so. And so don't be surprised. But the other thing I can say is Europe has better privacy laws than the U.S. So
yes. And lastly, what if you lose your passport?
Well, if you lose, for us Americans, if you lose your passport, you go to the travel.gov website and review some of the information there. And I advise you to contact the nearest U.S. embassy or consulate for assistance. And again, it pays off if you have a copy of your passport as a picture on your phone, or even better, before you leave, make a photocopy of it. And so you have it on paper as well.
And I would say this applies for travelers from all countries, right? Like they would contact their embassy or consulate here in Italy.
That's a typical thing to do. So.
Okay. Some good advice on passports.
Okay. So next question to you, Tanya. Do you recommend travel insurance?
I have to admit that we've not always been great about doing this ourselves. And we've been fortunate to date that we haven't needed it. Mm-hmm. But I am now a strong believer in it. And after seeing incidents and hearing about issues from others, whether in Italy or elsewhere, I swear to you, I feel like everybody has a story of guess what happened? And oh my gosh. And you just want to anticipate travel delays or disruptions, lost luggage, hotel or tour plans going awry, and even worse, illness or accident.
Yep.
So many things can go wrong either before your trip or during your trip, and a lot of money can be at risk. So, looking for coverage. Before you look for additional coverage, though, I want you to first understand what coverage you may already have.
Yeah.
Your current credit cards or your current home, car, or health insurance may offer some benefits for traveling. So look there first. Then I recommend to always take out additional travel insurance as needed, especially for emergency medical. Mm-hmm. And this first became clear to me when hiking in both the Amalfi Coast and Cinque Terre, when I saw people getting helicoptered off the mountain due to like twisted ankles or even, small injuries.
Yeah.
And while my first reaction was to be concerned about them and go, oh my gosh, what happened? My very next thought was, wow, I bet that's expensive.
That must be expensive, a helicopter ride.
So
luckily not as expensive as in the US though.
For sure. And adding on to that, while you won't be refused healthcare in Italy, that cost is also definitely more reasonable than the US. It's going to be out of network, right? And so it's going to be expensive. I don't think it's not going to be zero. So prepare for that. Additionally, with coverage, make sure to read the fine print and understand which activities are covered. You may need to take out additional coverage if you plan to rent a Vespa, for example, or do anything considered to be an adventure activity. And I'm going to make a side note here on this topic and say, please don't attempt to do anything risky in a foreign country that you don't have a ton of experience doing in your home country, because you do not want to put yourself in a risky situation in a foreign country. I mean, at home you have resources. You do not want to mess up your trip.
I know it's very tempting to do stuff that maybe you're used at home, on the roads at home, but you will find a very different environment in a foreign country. So,
it may be fun, but having an accident and spending it in a hospital is not fun.
No. Okay, so do you have any advice about insurance companies then?
Well, because there are so many companies and policies and it really depends on your specific needs, I'm reluctant to recommend any. And I would have to say my best advice is to go on the internet. I found great articles from Forbes, NerdWallet, that list what they believe to be like the top 10 best travel insurance companies and policies. And you can also ask your insurance advisor. So that's my advice on how to look for insurance.
Okay.
The next question is for you, Davide.
Okay.
How should one prepare to have cell phone service while in Italy? Our cell phones are critical travel tools. They're critical life tools.
Yes.
And I usually delegate that task to you to make sure that my cell phone works at all times. So what's your advice?
Well, the good news is that your cell phone will work in Italy as well. I think what's essential on your cell phone is more the data plan than the actual talking, because you're using it so much for the internet or Google Maps or any other apps that you need while you're there. So before you go, talk to your cell phone provider if they have an international plan. I know that T-Mobile has gives you 5 gigabytes for free. You can add on as well if you need more than that. I know that AT&T has one, and I'm sure Verizon has one too.
So what about a VPN, Davide? What is it, and do you recommend getting it?
So a VPN is actually a virtual private network. It will mask the IP address that you currently are to a different one anywhere in the world. So why is that good? Because when you're using public Wi-Fi or even your hotel Wi-Fi, it might be I wouldn't trust that.
Well, you're at
too
risk
much.
with hackers.
Yeah, just with hackers, especially when you have to access the very sensitive websites like your bank and stuff like that. Use the VPN. There's some for free, but I recommend just pay one for a month and you have it. So and you're good.
You can use this for your cell phone and your computer.
Yes, you can the same. You can download the app on your phone, on your iPad, or on your computer, and it will work just fine.
That's good advice. Are there any other apps that you recommend people download before they leave home?
Yes, actually, the WhatsApp app is actually really used in Italy. Some hotels and other vendors, when they're looking for you, they actually want to look for you on WhatsApp because that's what they just use. So, and even like if you want to communicate back home with your loved ones, have them use WhatsApp as well, because then you can call for free, you can text for free, versus using your international plan, because there's always a cost to that. So the other app I'm recommending, which you probably already have on your phone, is Google Maps, because you're going to use that a lot to look for restaurants, look for directions to the next city if you are driving. You can also use Waze. Waze is actually used a lot here in Europe.
Now, these also, you also want to make sure you can download key trips, right? Or save them offline in case you don't have access.
Yes, actually, if you have data, before you leave, put the directions on the Google Maps and hit start, and then it will use the GPS. And then if you are driving somewhere and you're out of reach, it still keeps it going because it's using GPS. So that's a good advice, Tanya. So anyway, what
other
else?
apps?
Train, ferry, or taxi apps. There's the Trenitalia app, Uber, or IT Taxi, or the App Taxi, or the Free Now. So can you explain that a little bit, Tanya? Because you are more familiar to those than to...
Yes, these are all just related to transportation in Italy. And there isn't just like Uber everywhere like it is in the US. So Uber is in the big cities like Rome and Milan. But others, apps that I've learned of are IT Taxi, App Taxi, and Free Now. They're similar to Uber, but they just are more popular in certain areas than the others. So it's nice to have a selection available. And then, of course, Trenitalia is a great train app to use. And there's going to be, the trip itinerary or tour operators. Okay. They often have their own apps as well. And lastly,
the Metro apps?
Metro.
Yeah, because like Rome and Milan and Naples, they have metros. So you can download that app and then you can
easy
purchase
access
your
to
tickets.
maps and such.
Cool. Okay, Tanya, let's talk about another popular question. Cash and credit cards. It's a very big topic. I got a few questions for you, though. So let's start with cash. Do you recommend that people get euros before they go to Italy, or wait until they get there?
Very good question. Probably the most popular question I receive from clients. And I used to say just wait until you get to Italy. But in recent years, I've changed my opinion on this and do recommend getting 200 to 300 euros in the US before you leave or from your home country. Mm-hmm. And it's really more of a convenience thing than a must do, but I like to have cash available for tips, and I don't want to be stressed about having to locate an ATM machine immediately upon arrival. And the key thing is that you can order it from your bank. Usually you need at least 3 days notice, so don't wait until the day before. Or you can wait to exchange money at the airport. Now, the bank is cheaper, but I'm not convinced it's much better. Our bank recently explained that if we ordered more than 250 euros, there was no fee, but the current published exchange rate was 1.12, and they were going to charge me 1.18. Now, I didn't compare that to the airport, but
it's about the same. It's very expensive. So because it's a convenience,
right? And you're doing this as a convenience. Mm-hmm. So again, do that before you leave as a convenience, but you can also wait until you get to Italy. Your debit card is going to work at almost all ATM machines, also called a bancomat in Italy. And just make sure to notify your bank before you leave so they don't shut it off the first time you try to use it. I've had that happen. And also ask about fees. Our bank gives a good exchange rate, but then charges a 2.9% transaction fee. So I've heard some credit cards offer better cash withdrawal options, or even you can get a checking account through your credit card company, but I haven't looked into it a ton. So
Okay.
it's something to note, but just be aware of the fees. And I think just relying on ATMs. Once in Italy, I do recommend that you look for ATMs associated with a larger, what I call brick and mortar banks. Like these are actual buildings, the banks, versus private companies.
So not like randomly at the airport or stores or even gas stations like we have in the US.
Yes, and sometimes they're even in the middle of a street and you think they might be good, but these are private companies and they're usually charging a fee and an additional transaction fee and even a worse exchange rate.
Yes.
So avoid those. Look for a larger bank. They're going to have a competitive exchange rate. Though I have noted that some are also starting to charge fees too. I just got hit with a €5 fee last week, but I've had good luck with Deutsche Bank.
Yeah.
And they're in most big cities, so look for those.
Or Monte Paschi di Siena. That's a really good one that we use that.
Yeah. So large banks, go to their ATMs. They've got secure foyers as well, and that have cameras that are watching you. So I feel safe in those.
Okay, so you said to start off with 200 or 300 euros, right? But how much cash should someone bring? Or what is expected?
Well, it depends, right? But for the most part, you're going to use cash for tips and small purchases like coffees and snacks. Like in Europe in general, they use cash more than we do in the US. So you do want to have some. And I do want to point out that a lot of tour operators, tour guides and car services require a cash payment. Or at least they offer a cheaper price sometimes if you pay with cash versus credit card. So in those instances, be aware of your needs a day or two in advance and look for an ATM machine. But overall, I recommend that you balance the desire to have fewer trips to the ATM and fewer transaction fees with the risk of having too much cash on you. So make sure to divvy it up between yourself and your travel partner so it's not all with one person. I also recommend leaving some in the hotel safe, so you're not walking around with all of it. And the last item to point out about European or Euro cash is to count your change when transacting in cash and just be aware of the higher value of coins. That in the US, our most expensive coin is 25 cents. Like you can throw a handful of coins away and it's not a big deal. Here, it actually is worth something because a coin can be €2.
Yeah.
And I remember one time my dad, we were finishing at a restaurant and he threw in a tip and he was like, it's just a bunch of coins. And I'm like, you just dropped 15
euros.
And tourists are easy to confuse. So just count your cash when you're dealing with cash.
All right.
Well, I think that effectively covers using cash in Italy, Davide. But what's your advice about credit cards?
Well, we try to use credit card as much as possible because it gives you the best exchange rate. And our in particular doesn't charge us foreign transaction fees, right? So when you have credit cards, check with your credit card if they do that, if they hit you with a foreign transaction fee. Maybe you want to opt out to a different one that doesn't do that, like Capital One. Chase is another one that doesn't do it that we could verify.
Yeah, it's important. I mean, those fees quickly add up if they're adding 0.5% even to every single transaction.
Yeah. So another thing that we haven't talked about is Apple Pay. You can actually put your credit card on your wallet and you can actually pay with Apple Pay. Not everywhere, but wherever you can kind of like
tap your card.
Tap the card, you can use Apple Pay. So
that's good to know.
Yeah. Then it's important that before you go, you notify your credit card company that, hey, I'm going to Italy. So
yes, similar with the debit card. You need to do that with your credit card. So are all credit cards accepted in Italy?
So most places, they, of course, accept Visa or MasterCard. The American Express used to be mostly a no, but they're kind of coming back. I think at hotels, car rentals, they accept them, but not at the smaller stores or gas stations. So I definitely recommend you have a Visa or a MasterCard as a backup if you just want to use your American Express one. A word to Discover card. It's not known here in Europe at all. So as of yet that we know, but don't come with a Discover card. So I also recommend always to bring a couple of credit cards as a backup, as I mentioned, right? And then either split the cards between travel partners or just leave some at the hotel as a backup. Otherwise, it defies the purpose, right?
Right. It's only a backup if it's not with the primary card, right?
Exactly. So also another important thing and is to, when you have, like Tanya and I have the same Capital One, right? But my number is different than yours. So it's kind of two different cards. So you want that. And this, why, Tanya?
Well, unfortunately, we had to learn the hard way on this tip, as most lessons are learned. And it was because my wallet was stolen, and we'll touch on that here in an upcoming section. But our bank credit card issued cards to us with the same account number. And
Right.
I never paid attention to that before, if we had the same number or not. But when I had to call them to turn off my stolen credit card, your card was naturally also inactivated because it was the same number. And then we were down to one credit card. And luckily it was the Capital One card. And we had, as you explained, two different card numbers. So they could close my card and it didn't affect your card, which saved us.
I know, and I guarded that credit card with my life because it was our only money we had.
Yes.
So
that was an expensive lesson to learn, or could have been. And hopefully you learn something from that and don't be in the same situation.
Exactly. Okay, so let's move on to your favorite topic, packing. So Tanya, what advice do we have for our audience about packing?
Well, I'm going to admit that even after a lifetime of travel, I am not the best at this and actually really dislike it.
Why don't you pack like me in 10 minutes?
I wish, more like hours. But I'm going to cover first, how much to bring, because I think to me that's the biggest anxiety that I have is I want to bring everything. And my, easiest thing to advise is every traveler needs to be able to transport their own luggage. My parents lived by this model. If you can carry it, you can bring it. And you will need to be able to carry it down cobblestone streets, train stations, potentially up and down stairs getting to the train track. And there's just stairs everywhere in Italy. So you're not going to have a personal porter helping you with your luggage at all times. So you need to be able to carry it.
Okay.
So next, if you can, try to live with only carry-on luggage. Now, I can't do this for myself, for trips more than a week, but I aspire to. At a minimum, though, I strongly recommend that you put a couple of days worth of clothes in your carry-on suitcase in case your checked bag gets delayed. That is so important. And I have found, some great travel backpacks now that carry almost as much as a carry-on suitcase. And that paired with another carry-on or a checked-in bag works great. So again, just make sure your carry-on suitcase is used strategically in case you are without your checked bag for potentially up to 3 days.
Okay, well, that covers how much to bring, but any advice on what to bring? What do we need there in Italy?
Yes, and I first want to point out that I have an entire web page dedicated to suggestions on what to pack. So I'm first going to direct everybody to go look at that for lots of great details and even helpful purchase links. But I'm going to try to whittle it down to some key categories for you. Of critical importance are our electrical items, right? We can't live without our phones and our computers. And just to note that Italy has a different voltage for electricity.
220 instead of 110.
Yep. And they have different plugins. So at a minimum for your electronics, like your phones and computers, you will need to get adapters to convert the plug-in to the Southern European standard. And, I recommend getting ones that have multiple plugins and USB ports, or just bring multiple adapters. You will need them. Though for items such as razors, hair dryers, and other styling tools, you'll want to purchase those that are dual voltage or get a transformer. I actually recommend the former.
Yeah.
It's easier to get dual voltage these days.
And they're small these days.
They are. Next, be prepared for bad weather. It will probably rain at some point during your trip. My poor clients right now are experiencing that, unfortunately. It's been very rainy this month.
It's rainy today again in Pistoia, so.
Yes. So pack a raincoat and an umbrella. Very important. And we just got offered an umbrella on the street when we went out for lunch, and they are cheap. So bring a good one. And you will need a sweater and other layering items, for chilly nights or just rainy days. And of course, be sure to pack comfortable shoes. And you're going to be doing a ton of walking, usually at least 15,000 steps a day, and on bumpy cobblestone roads. So you need cushion.
Okay.
Now, for clothing, I'm going to boil this down to basically daytime and nighttime advice.
Okay.
Daytime, dress largely as you're going to dress at home or you would at home. Just focus on being comfortable. And, shorts and dresses are okay. Just be aware that you may need to cover up your shoulders and legs if you visit churches.
Yes.
And it is enforced. So, some clever tips are, zip off pants for guys. They look kind of dorky, but they work. And scarves. So you can wrap them around your shoulders and cover up your shoulders.
Okay.
At nighttime, be prepared to dress a little bit nicer.
Yep.
Avoid shorts.
Mm-hmm.
Wear a shirt with a collar, potentially a jacket for the guys. And women can dress up with, better shoes and jewelry and scarves. So this is just for a couple of hours in the evening. Focus is not as much on comfort, but you do want to look maybe a little bit more stylish and fit in with the locals. Okay, I think we've covered the key questions about prepping for your trip to Italy. Let's move on to some questions related to being in Italy. And this is a key topic area that comes up a lot, safety and security. Davide, do you feel Italy is a safe country to travel to?
It is very safe to travel. If you are in a touristy spot, the police, also known, as Carabinieri, they are present on the key points in the city, for example, train stations or at the large squares. So also violent crime is not high in Italy at all. You don't see that. But you will probably see like general theft or trickery. Pickpocketing is real. We experienced it, right, Tanya?
Mm-hmm.
So it happens all the time if you put your guard down, especially in touristy areas.
Yes, I completely agree. And it happened to me personally.
Mm-hmm.
It happened to a friend recently. And I often tell my clients that it's likely the only crime you may suffer in your life where you may actually be smiling when it happens to you.
Yeah.
Because they are clever, they are charming you, distracting you, and you won't know that it happened until it's too late. So I never fear of like physical harm in Italy. I fear for my possessions.
Yes, and the money. Anyway, but be on alert and be aware of your surroundings all the time, especially when you're traveling on trains, buses, anywhere where it's crowded. Be alert. It's easy to get lost on your cell phone while you're sitting on the train, or so make sure that one of you in the group is watching the surroundings.
Exactly.
Okay.
And
so
I'm going to say that you should absolutely not keep anything valuable in pockets. And I'm going to say this is like your front pockets, your back pockets, your shirt pocket, your jacket pocket. Any type of pocket is at risk of getting pickpocketed. And again, they're clever. So I strongly encourage everybody, male and female, to have a crossbody bag. Mm-hmm. And they have lots of great options for guys. So, get over any vanity you have about having a Merce.
I have a Merce.
And
love it.
They're neutral, they're easy, and actually I think they're quite convenient.
Very. I don't go out without it now. So it's very, I put everything, keys, wallet,
your phone,
my phone. And sometimes when I'm on the train, I put the phone where it's zipped. Otherwise, I just leave it for quick reach out on the front pocket. So, yeah.
These bags are awesome. And I have a couple of different crossbodies, and they have zippers on the front, but even more importantly, they usually have a hidden zipper on the back. And that's where you can put your passport and, money and stuff, even to make it double safe that it's not accessible. And with this bag even, you need to hold it in front of you on public transportation or in crowded areas. And anytime, somebody is talking to you, your hand should be on your valuables.
Yeah, always a hand on.
Yes. And, again, I had this happen to me where I was on the Rome Metro.
Mm-hmm.
We were almost falling over, so I was paying attention to our daughter. And while I was doing that, a little old lady behind me was pulling my purse behind me, unzipping it and taking out my wallet. Mm-hmm. And only when we stopped did I look down and notice that it had happened. And then who was I going to accuse? The 20 people around me? Anyway, be on the lookout.
Okay. So, and again, only carry a couple of credit cards on you. Just minimal cash that you need for the day. And your ID, just bring copies like we said before. So, okay, so then just general street smarts, right? Avoid being alone in dark places at night, particularly if you're alone. If you're alone and just ask somebody that maybe you were in a restaurant, ask them, but can you bring me to the car, or can you bring me to, or order a cab. So avoid people at attractions offering like pictures or small gifts, flowers. Again, this is not for free. They give you, oh, this is for free, but then they want money.
Or it's a distraction and somebody else is helping themselves to money.
Exactly. So just
avoid them.
Be aware of that. Also, buy tickets and tours from licensed vendors. Do not buy them from people that, hey, you can skip the line. Here are tickets, because they might be
It's largely a scam.
Yeah. So anyway, then never leave ever anything in the car. When you rent a car and let's say you need to park it somewhere to go do something, do not leave your car unattended. Have somebody, just one person, go to the thing, or
take turns if you have to stop at the roadside and use the restroom.
Yeah. Do not like park it to go to a mercado or something like that.
Just anything. And it's really hard sometimes because you are traveling from different destinations and you often have your luggage in the car and you are tempted to want to leave it in the car and like see an attraction on the way. But because rental cars are different signage or your license plate, they know it's a rental car. So even if it's in the trunk,
they know
you're hit. And I've just heard so many stories about this that we never leave anything in a car.
Okay.
Additionally, what about trains?
Yeah, trains. If you travel on trains, always have your backpack in front of you, never behind you. Always make sure that your valuables are in front of you. Do not put your backpack on the top shelf where they offer,
Luggage storage.
Do not do that.
No, I've also heard people saying they ran through the car, grabbed and run.
Yeah.
And then they're getting off the train. So you have no chance of catching these guys. So just, again, always have your valuables in front of you with your hand on it.
All right. Anyway, with everything, when some misfortune happens to you, there are phone numbers you can call. For example, the emergency number is 112, which is similar to the 911 known in the US, right? Oh, and so then let me say one more thing, though. If you are a victim of theft, be sure that you go to the Questura, to the police station, to file a report, because you need that to file a claim back home then. So, okay, Tanya. So, what about finding drinking water and restrooms while traveling in Italy?
Well, first, I'm going to say staying hydrated in Italy is important, especially in the hotter months. And as we mentioned in episode 2, Eating in Italy, Italians only drink bottled water. Mm-hmm. Now, we're not quite sure why that exactly is. It's a cultural thing, but I want to highlight that the tap water in Italy is completely safe. There's nothing wrong with it. So
no.
Don't be worried at all. You can fill up your water bottle in the hotel to try and save on, purchasing water. And even better, many cities have public water fountains fed by mountain spring water. And it's cool and it's refreshing. So take your water bottle with you and fill it up unless
there's a sign there. And the sign says acqua non potabile, meaning no drink water. So
look for anything that says no in it.
Yeah.
Just
acqua, water, non potabile. Means no drink water. So
yeah. Other than that, fill up those water bottles and save plastic bottles.
Okay. So however, if you're staying hydrated, then the next issue is to find a restroom to relieve.
Yes. Haha.
Okay. So tell me a little bit about restrooms, Tanya.
Well, my first advice in this area is to always make use of a restroom when in a restaurant or a museum or other larger facility. Like, do not miss out on this opportunity. Just ask everybody in their travel party, go use the restroom before we leave.
Which in Italy are called i bagni, right? Restrooms?
Yes.
Okay.
And because if you don't take advantage of those, public restrooms are difficult to find, or often difficult to find.
Okay.
However, I just learned of an app called Flush. And I haven't used it myself yet, but I actually just checked Pistoia.
Okay.
And a number of them popped up, and it indicates if it's free or not, and then has a link to Google Maps so you can find it.
So you can walk to it.
Yeah, so we need to practice this more often. I do want to highlight that you're often going to have to pay.
So they're not all free.
They're not all free. Though this app will tell you if they're free or not. But if they're not, expect to pay about 50 cents to $1.50.
Okay.
And so have some coins handy whenever you go to the restroom. And I'm also going to warn that they may not be well stocked. So make sure to always carry portable wipes or tissues. And I have some links to those on my website. So stock up before you leave home. And worst case, if you can't find a public restroom, the next advice is to go to a bar or cafe. But note that if you do, it's expected that you purchase something as compensation.
Consume something and then ask for, dove sono I bagni?
Correct. So it's, similar to the US. You don't just want to walk in and use their bathrooms. It's expected that you purchase something. Okay, so let's move to another key topic while traveling. What happens if you get sick? And unfortunately, traveling often brings on illness, either something you catch on the plane or just being around a lot of people in a different environment and different food often, causes some havoc on your body. So be prepared. Davide, what do you recommend in this area?
Well, okay. When I travel, I always bring with me my favorite meds that I need, like ibuprofen or Tylenol, something that I need not on a daily, but I wanted to have it handy. So whatever you use for headaches, colds, sore muscles, upset stomachs, you know yourself better than anyone else, right? Bring that with you. But if you run out and you don't have the right stuff with you anymore, you can go to a pharmacy. That's the only place you can get meds, over-the-counter meds, not at the grocery stores like in the US, okay? So go to a pharmacy and they will help you. You need to explain, I have a headache or I have a sore throat. And so
I have to say this is better than in the US, right? You don't go into a pharmacy in the US and expect that the pharmacist is really going to provide kind of medical advice.
Yeah, that's kind of like a walk-in clinic almost, right? So,
but here they do. They're very helpful.
Okay. So some meds to mention that you might want, the ibuprofen, ask for Moment. So it's called Moment. For Tylenol, they do not have Tylenol, but they have something similar that works similar as Tylenol, which is called the tachipirina. Then they do for like sore throats, they do have like throat sprays. So just tell them, hey, I need something for la gola. My gola is scratchy. And so they already understand. So then if you're sicker than that, you can go to an emergency room at the hospital, which is called Pronto Soccorso. They will never refuse care for you, public or private. So,
yeah. And I do want to make note that I had a client that broke her foot while stepping off a curb in Rome. And she went to the public ER and learned that it was going to be a bit of a long wait. And somebody there recommended to go to a private clinic because it would be faster. And she was actually there for the Ryder Cup, so wanted to not miss out. So she went to the private ER and was able to get an x-ray and care. And it was 50 euros.
Yeah,
so don't be like afraid to go to the private ER versus the public one. It's affordable.
Okay. Well, next. So if you need to see a doctor, actually, there are drop-in clinics called Guarda Medica. So the walk-in clinics that I was telling you about. You can Google it. When you go there, expect to pay 30 to 40 euros. And then if you also are staying with a hotel, for example, ask the concierge to call a doctor. They still make house calls in Italy. So, and then there's also an app in Italy, which is called, what is it called?
Doctors in Italy.
Oh, Doctors in Italy. They can help you to find a doctor that speaks English. Very important for people that do not speak Italian.
Exactly.
So,
okay, well, thanks, Davide. For our final topic, let's briefly cover tipping, as this is another key question I get asked by almost every single client.
My favorite topic.
Yes, and I even moved the cheat sheet I created to be front and center in their travel documents. We covered this a little bit in the Eating in Italy episode for restaurants.
So we don't need to go there anymore.
A little bit. But in general, tipping is not as expected as it is in the US, but it is appreciated. And you should
It's more a gratuity then.
It is a gratuity.
Yeah.
And you should usually tip in cash because it's just not typically allowed on credit card slips as it is in the US. So this is why it's important to have some cash on hand. And since tips are not required, if you get bad service or they act like you should tip and are kind of arrogant about it, I say don't.
Yeah.
But it is nice to reward good service. So I'll cover a couple of key areas in general. For waiters, again, a few euros. And if it's a really high-end restaurant, maybe 10%. For other areas like coffee, cafes, a bartender, you're going to round up maybe to the nearest euro.
Yep.
Leave 1, maybe 2 euros and leave it on the counter. For a general taxi driver, similar to the US, 1 or 2 euros. But if you have a private driver and you're using somebody for a whole day, you're going to want to do like 5 euros or, potentially 10% of the entire fare.
If it's the whole day.
And other common people to tip include a tour guide. For a standard tour, maybe 5 to 10 euros per person, except for some tours actually operate on kind of a nominal fee. Like we had one in Florence that
5
charged
euros,
$5 in total. And so
then you want to give a little bit
them
more.
a good tip.
10, 20 euros or so.
Right.
Okay.
You may also want to tip the porter or the concierge at your hotel.
Yeah.
A couple of euros. Your housekeeper, maybe €1 per day. So covers sort of, again, general guidance is a few euros. You're never tipping somebody like 20% or 15% like we do in the US.
Okay. Well, that was a lot. Again,
we covered a lot.
I know we always cover a lot, and we always say, "Oh, this one is going to be a half an hour." So, and then we end up like almost an hour. But I'm sure I'm going to edit this down. Okay, so we're done with our topic, and now, as usual, we're going to leave you with tips from Tanya. Tips from Tanya.
So, given the list of questions we just covered, I'm not going to try and summarize them all down to 2 or 3 key tips because I think they're all important at some point during your journey.
Okay.
So I guess my one tip is to make sure to invest the time to adequately prepare and really stressing that your safety and comfort are key to having a good travel experience, no matter where you go. But even more important when traveling in a foreign country where you won't have the resources, the knowledge, and quite frankly, the time that you have when you are at home. You do not want to give up any minute or hour of your trip to some unfortunate accident or delay or just inconvenience. You want a smooth, stress-free travel experience. And I agree with Ben Franklin on this one. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And just do not risk not having the best trip possible.
So for us foreign English-speaking people, better safe than sorry?
Yes.
Okay. Well, we are here at the end of the episode. Thank you again for listening from all over the world. We're very excited to see what's happening. And I hope also today you learned something useful and that better prepares you when you go to Italy. And
we'll be back with another episode in 2 weeks.
We will indeed. Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, everybody. We hope you've enjoyed Experience Italy with Friends. If you like the podcast, remember to follow us and leave a review letting us know what you found to be the most helpful. And if you want expert advice or assistance in creating your own immersive and authentic experience in Italy, visit us at www.amicivacations.com.